Welcome to Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad, the podcast that prepares you for one of life's toughest yet inevitable moments, stepping in when your parents need you most. Hosted by Spade, a senior real estate specialist with Keller Williams Realty. We'll dive deep into more than just moving. We're talking smart financial planning, making tough decisions with confidence, and strategies to avoid being caught in crisis mode. Join us for real stories, expert insights, and actionable steps to stay ahead of the curve. Now, here's your host, Spade.
And welcome back to Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad, the podcast where we help Gen Xers navigate life and the challenges of supporting our aging parents. I'm your host, Spade with Keller Williams Realty, right here in sunny San Diego. And today, I am super excited to introduce you Jamie Shapiro, the founder of Silver Linings Transitions. Now, Jamie and her team specialize in senior move management, helping older adults and their families plan, organize, and complete moves with compassion, dignity, and a lot less stress. Moving later in life is more than just packing up boxes. It's an emotional transition, and Jamie and her team go far beyond what traditional movers do. They create thoughtful, personalized plans to help seniors downsize, relocate, settle into their new homes with ease. I can't wait for you to hear more about what Jamie and her team offer and how they're making a difference in the lives of families right here in San Diego. Jamie, welcome to Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad. Thanks for being on the show.
Wow, I'm so impressed with your introduction. That is amazing, and I love what you're doing, and that you're hitting us Gen Xers, because we definitely need to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are, like, the reason I started the podcast was because I rolled into a situation and I was like, oh God, I need to find answers to a lot of things really quick. And so if we just help each other out and we don't go into crisis mode, this is much easier. You know?
You know what? There's an expression I use all the time, and that is that crisis doesn't make an appointment. And if we are not preparing proactively, we are doing a disservice to ourselves and our parents or family members.
Yeah, for sure. So Jamie, start telling me a little bit about Silver Linings Transition and what inspired you to start the company.
Oh, well, thank you. I love the opportunity to do that, because I usually, when I speak to seniors, I will ask the audience, how many of you have heard of senior move management? And maybe 10% of hands go up. And then when people find out that this industry even exists, their comment is, I wish I had known. So I literally was looking, I had a cancer diagnosis 20 years ago, really wanted to change the work that I was doing and didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I discovered the senior move management industry. They were having their national conference in San Diego. I think that was back in 2013. I went to the conference, and it was that light bulb moment. And I realized that it was work that, I really wanted to do. I was very close with my grandparents growing up. As a cancer survivor, the one thing you want to be is older. So I really, I have a compassion and love for seniors. I don't think you can do this work, but I am part of a national industry. It's called the National Association of Senior and Specialty Move Managers. So it's NASMM.org. A lot of people, we added specialty actually during COVID, because what was happening is we were doing all of these moves for seniors, and then we would get phone calls and people would start with, I'm only blah, blah, blah age. Would you still help me? And I jokingly said, we don't discriminate based on age. I want that, because I've personally been moved by the company. I went through a divorce, and then I actually moved again when I moved in with my boyfriend. So I had to downsize, or I like the term right size, personally twice. And I don't know if you've ever moved, Chris.
Oh yeah, I did a couple of years ago.
And I think often it's the move that keeps people from moving forward with what's better for them, because they don't know how they're going to do it. And what is really different about a senior move, if you think about it, most people typically are going up in size. They're going to a bigger house that's going to accommodate more, unless they're moving from Florida to California like I did.
Right.
But they're going up. And then when you are a senior and or an empty nester and you are going down, then you have to also make the decisions about what you're going to take with you and what you're going to do with the things that you don't take with you.
Yeah, and some of the things I visited some communities around here in San Diego, and for example, if someone is transitioning from, let's say, an 1,800 square foot house, but they're only going into a studio apartment
Mm-hmm.
in a senior community, whether that's assisted living or active adult or whatever, that's a significant downsize. That's
Mm-hmm.
huge. So you
Mm-hmm.
really have to pare down the essentials, right?
And then, right. And then throw in the physical limitations that come with aging. We can't do the things, climbing the ladders and reaching for the things that we used to be able to do. So,
Yep.
both of us are wearing glasses. I imagine you're a Gen Xer since this is the
Yep.
topic. Like, I can't
50.
see the screen without the glasses. Like,
Yeah.
we age and things,
Yep.
don't work the way they used to.
Yeah. So let's talk about senior move managers and the difference between a regular mover. So if we're going to go higher, like you said, a regular mover,
Mm-hmm.
what specifically is different about senior move managers versus regular movers?
Well, first of all, that's a great question. And I want to make sure that we absolutely use the term senior move manager because that is trademarked by NASM. And
Hmm.
NASM
Yep.
requires insurance.
Yep.
They have a code of ethics, just like a realtor versus a real estate agent.
Yep.
They have training classes so that you are dealing with the emotion behind this stuff. So just to give you an example, and this is such a good story, when I was moving from Florida to California, I had 3 young children. And my ex-husband was being relocated. And the movers came in and they packed everything. And when I say everything, I mean the garbage and the amount of oh yes, I mean
Oh my
everything. Uh-huh. And then
God. My eyeballs just bugged out of my head.
oh, and by the way, I have a 3-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old. They didn't pack the Wii remotes with the Wii. So
Oh
I've
my
never
God.
found the remotes, right? It was, and now I was not unpacked by them, but the
Hmm.
chaos that they left behind took me weeks. I didn't,
Yep.
we moved here without family, without friends, and I've got 3 young children and I'm trying to unpack a house and get settled in. So
Hmm.
that is one big difference. The other thing is that, we are looking at the floor plan. We're looking at what can realistically fit. We're taking into account what are your physical limitations. The movers aren't going to consider whether or not you can get up from that couch or whether
Right.
that's what's the best thing to take. So we're helping make the decisions about what furniture you can take.
Yep.
When we are helping you move, we are considering, what is the space that you're going to? How are you realistically going to live? We're supporting you both emotionally, but also logistically through the decisions that you're going to make. Then we do the packing. And our company works with movers who are vetted. And I'm sure you have heard horror stories about
Oh yeah.
movers who
Oh yeah.
the truck and then right so we have recourse. We vetted those movers. We have a relationship with them, and how we work is that we do all of the pre-packing. They'll come in, and if we need them to, and look at, are there things that need to be disassembled? What is it a high rise? Do we have to account for elevators? Do we have to account for bookshelves or things that need to be taken off the wall? Like, we really look at the holistic thing, and then we plot it out according to what the timelines are and what is going to be needed. But what's, I think, the best thing about what we do is that when we move our clients, we recreate spaces that feel like home for them. We've gotten to know them. We know, what are their favorites? What is their routine every day? Movers are typically showing up the day before, the move, shoving it all in boxes, and they don't care if it's going to fit. And then
Yep.
if you're lucky and they unpack, it might go to the first available surface. But when we put it away, I always like to joke that when I moved that time I told you about, I couldn't find my coffee pot. So here I am. I've got
Oh, I'd
3.
be annoyed. I'd be
You
so
imagine?
mad.
Right. Yeah. And I won't even go into the tangent about that whole move. But when we work with our client, not only do they know where the coffee pot is, but we have recreated, we put the coffee pot, the coffee cups near the pot, and we've put the sugar and the teas, and so that it makes sense. So you are basically being unpacked, decorated, and organized simultaneously. And we then know where you can find things. Like, we'll get phone calls because it's, I will say honestly, if somebody else has unpacked you, then you might not know where something is, but we will photograph it. But if you call us, we can say, well, it's right near the coffee pot. It's
Mhm.
just going to make sense.
So when So let's say a senior, let's say you've come in, you've done the pre-packing, all that's done, and then the movers come the next day or whatever, and the senior's there with their daughter or son or whatever. Then you move them out that day into the new space. So
Mhm.
essentially what I'm assuming is maybe senior and adult child can go have lunch, go to the zoo, do whatever that day.
Not
You
only can they, but we encourage it because what happens, well, first of all, we've already worked with you to get to know you, and you can absolutely be there when we're packing and, and we've
Mhm.
done sorting with you. Like through that process, we've done your floor plan. In the perfect scenario, we've helped with the floor plan. We've helped you sort through your belongings. We've gotten to know you. We know your routines. And then we pack. And then the next day, we meet the movers in the morning. While they're loading up the truck, we're doing the last minute items. We're doing the items in the refrigerator, the things that, most movers don't take.
Mhm.
And then also what we tell people is like sleep in your bed that last night, make your coffee. We'll pack up those last minute items while the movers are there getting the furniture loaded. So our clients, in a perfect scenario, if there's not elevators involved, they will sleep in their bed every single night. The night that they are leaving their home, and then the night in their new home, we'll make the bed. We'll put fresh sheets on the bed. But we want the clients actually not there because then we're in a
Easier.
small space. You've got us, you've got them. And we tell them, you're welcome to be here, but you will slow us down. And you have to sign a liability waiver because, people can get knocked over when there are a lot of
Mhm.
craziness.
Yeah. So let's start from walk us through the first steps of a typical project and what happens when a family calls you to help. Some Gen X adult child says, "Hey Jamie,
Mhm.
my dad, my mom, or both my parents need to downsize." How does that process look from that first phone call?
Sure. So we do offer a free consultation where we will meet with the parent. Sometimes the adult child wants to be there. Sometimes they just want to be told. Sometimes, there's a caregiver. So, whoever those parties are, sometimes we'll meet the parent and have the child on the phone virtually and, be talking with them. But we want to walk through the house, get an assessment of, what they have. We want to get to know the client. And by the way, even if the adult child is hiring us, we always say that the person being moved is our client. We want to make sure
Yeah.
that we are taking care of them first and foremost,
Yeah.
because there are family dynamics that come
Yep.
into the equation. And so our priority is safely moving, mom, dad, or family member.
Mhm.
But we are, communicating every step of the way. Whoever signs the contract, so we do the consultation, we answer the questions, and then we just determine an estimate based on the services that they're going to need. We always recommend that we do that floor plan because a lot of people say they can do it or they will do it. And then we find that they're trying to bring way more than is going to safely or realistically fit. And then we find that it takes more time because then the movers have to go back. We have to box things back up. And we don't get to unpack them the way we want to. So we really ask them to lean into our expertise because we've been doing this for 11 years. We know what we're doing. We know what most people take to a community. It's kind of like packing for a dorm, right? I mean, everybody who's ever done it, they sort of know you've got to have sheets, you've got to have towels, you've got to have your
Toiletries and
exactly,
everything. Yeah,
exactly.
toothbrush and toothpaste.
So we do the consultation, we give them an estimate once they've accepted the estimate, and they can tweak it if they're like, I don't want this or I do need this. And we let them know, listen, we're giving you the estimate based on the work that you've said you're going to do. But if you don't do that work, like if you don't sort for us, and then we end up having to come in and sort, it's going to add hours. So,
Mhm.
hopefully we get to sort with them, and some people make very quick decisions and it's just like, nope, 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 I don't want it. And some people agonize and want to tell stories. And so we're going to be communicating with you through the process. Hey, this is going to take longer because this is what we're finding so that we can, immediately address it. We take a deposit of half when we do the estimate. We get the contract signed and then we start the process. And again, if we find that it's not going the way we expect it to, then we're going to get a work scope change. So, hey, this is what we all agreed to. This is what it's really going to be. So that again, there's not going to be a big surprise on the final bill.
Right.
Then we've done the packing. And then in theory, the mover comes the day that the person is going to move in. again, the team lead, and that's how we have one team lead who's like the project manager who guides the client through the whole process and gets to know them. And then we will meet the mover, finish those last minute things, and then we'll unpack, put everything away, make the bed, hang the pictures. And we like to carry a magic wand. Our tagline is making moves magical. And
nice.
yeah, and for two reasons. Number one is because, people, though they don't even know that this is possible. And, and I jokingly, say, you're going to be surprised. You're going to understand why I carry a magic wand. And then the other reason that I like to carry that magic wand is when I go into that consultation, or one of my managers goes in, like Dawn, who we know we were both friends with. When she goes in, having that magic wand and saying, because we know that this is going to be an emotional process. This is not going to be an easy, light thing. Like, this can be heavy. This is something that, most of us haven't been through. We haven't had parents who could no longer either stay home safely, or maybe it's not in their best interest, from a social connection. Like, they need people around them. Maybe they're not driving, just whatever challenges. So going in with that magic wand and saying, if I could wave a magic wand and take away your concerns, what would your concerns be? And that gives them that opportunity to sort of let go of their fear and just imagine. So that's where that wand comes in.
So one of the things I find, and you touched on this just briefly, but I want to expand on it a little more, is there are a couple things that seniors have, their biggest fears, right? Is one, where am I going to go? So once they realize that they've got somewhere safe to go, they're feeling a little bit more comfortable. And two, what am I going to do with all my stuff? And you talked a little bit about, going through the sorting process and stuff like that. So, that part is extremely overwhelming. So how do you help families decide what to keep, donate, or just let go of? Like, what does that process look like?
So I will tell you, the decision seems to be easier than the idea of having to let go of things. So I definitely want to mention that, because, people have spent a lifetime accumulating their belongings. They have significance. They feel like they're worth something. They don't want to be forgotten. So there's so much emotion behind what we keep. And that has to always be addressed. And I always, when I start my presentations, I do a lot of, I call them right sizing or downsizing presentations. I start the conversation with, if you were going to leave San Diego in front of a group of people, if you were going to leave San Diego next week, and you only took the things that you wanted, I want you to put your hand up really high if your family members would want to take the rest of your stuff. And then everybody looks around and they see that nobody's hand has gone up. And then I jokingly say, okay, so you just told me that your own family doesn't want your stuff, but now you want to do an estate sale. So some stranger is going to want your stuff. So, so what I basically do in terms of making those decisions is, I will say this because I know that this is geared towards the adult children. Say yes whenever you can say yes, because whether you get rid of it later, or, you do something else with it, your parents don't want to believe that their belongings are going into a landfill, or that they are not. And also they want to know they're going to be remembered. And so, when
that's huge.
Yeah. So when I have a conversation geared toward the senior, I have a different conversation. But I would say towards the adult child is say yes when you can. And then the other thing that I did this with my own mom, who lives in Florida, and I'm her only child. And when my grandmother passed away unexpectedly, my mother was not prepared to deal with her things. And she ended up what's called grief hoarding and bringing it all into her home. And okay, so you see the head nod, because she wasn't prepared to go. And then also my family fought over belongings. I mean, I didn't get a lamp that my grandmother had promised me. And so, what I encourage us as the Gen Xers, our parents, to do is to have those tough conversations and say, hey, I need you to let me know what's important. It's actually called Swedish death cleaning. And if you haven't done
I've never heard of that before. I'm going to write that down.
It's proactively going through your home as if you had passed. And making sure that those decisions are made, and that your family is not fighting over. I mean, when my aunt passed away, and this is a true story, I had 4 cousins. She did not designate her desires. The four of them, there was such a fight that the police had to be called. And this wasn't even about the will. This was about the stuff. And I am certain that that would not have been the legacy that my aunt would have, wanted to leave. So we
Right.
need to have those conversations. We need to, say yes when we can say yes, and then get the stories. Like, give your parents a chance to have a show and tell. I mean, for me, I did that, personally when I was going through my things and right sizing. My kids didn't want my Girl Scout sash. They didn't want my prom corsage, right? But I at least got to share those stories. And then I took pictures of those things so that
Yes.
they could then, I could have them to remember them, and then I could let them go.
Yeah. Yeah. I went through a similar thing with my family when my mom passed away. 19 years it'll be this December. And when she passed away, there was one thing I wanted, just one thing. I wanted a wind chime. That's it. That's all I wanted. And I told my stepdad, I said, when you're ready, because my mom passed suddenly.
Mhm.
My sister came in and cleaned everything out one day when he was at work, just cleaned everything. So I get what you're talking about. So this Swedish death cleaning makes sense to me. So that's very nice.
I want to share another idea with you that I actually heard from another move manager who wrote a book called Squint. Her name is Margaret Novak. And she shared a story about two sisters who both wanted the two same things. One wanted a ring and one wanted a vase. And I'll usually ask the audience, how do you think they figured out who got what? And very rarely will they come up with the solution that she writes about in the book. And that was that they shared. So every year they passed it back and forth.
Oh, that's nice.
So, that wind chime, if you had both wanted it, it could have been passed back and forth. And maybe could have been some tradition that was built around the passing of the wind chime. And that would have been such a better legacy, to leave. And wouldn't it have been better if, we'd had those conversations, versus this has now happened. And now we've both seen what it's like when there's an unexpected death.
Yeah.
And you know what? Here's the thing. No one wants to talk about it, but none of us is getting out alive.
That's what I keep telling people. We're never going to get out of it alive. So.
I'd love to. Wouldn't that be great? A whole new podcast.
I know, right? Live forever and age very gracefully and be young forever. No wrinkles. That would be perfect. So let's kind of step back a little bit on logistics, because of the last several moves I've done, sales I've done, the real estate side of it. Couple of things I've had to tell my Gen Xers or older millennials is, one, when you're downsizing does not mean chucking, right? Like, you just can't chuck your parents' stuff. It's okay to get the dumpster when you're ready to throw stuff out, but not as you're starting that process. And that's number one. And number two, when I think sometimes seniors, like you said, overestimate the amount of space they're moving to. So when you are figuring that out, what does that look like? Is there some sort of program? Do you just go in and measure? And then how do you make sure, like, the bookcase is going to fit through the door? Because that's another thing, like you said. So I want people to hear this part specifically, because this is where I think a lot of people get hung up, right?
So we actually do measure. We do a 2-scale floor plan. We measure where they're going, and we measure their furniture, and we basically do paper dolls with their things. We use a magnetic floorboard, and then so everyone knows exactly what's going to fit. If there's a wheelchair or a walker, we're going to get the dimensions of that and make sure that it's going to clear the space. And then the other thing that we do is we take a look at the kitchen cabinets and the kitchen counters and the drawers. I mean, I've gone into senior communities where there might be 3 drawers, but they're coming from a home that they've got every single thing in a drawer. So let's be realistic about what you're really going to use. What's lifestyle? What are you really going to do? Are you going to bake and cook? Are you going, like having those conversations? And that's really what, a move manager can do. And I've actually had it where family members have called us in just to do the sorting and the packing because, mom and dad, and this is something that I really try to stress with the adult child, is your parent doesn't want you to parent them. They want to retain the role of parent. And when you come in and you start telling them, this is what you're going to do and this is what you're going to keep, you have just taken that role away from them. And they want to parent, as long as they possibly can. But at the same time, you also have these resistant parents who, listen, they are putting so much stress on their adult child because they are already pulled in the direction of their own life. And now they're worrying about mom and dad. So then it's also fair to go back to mom and dad and say, hey, this is causing me a lot of stress. How would you feel if this was your parent? And then let them take that role of parent back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. It's you can't dictate. They've been independent for so long and they've been independent over you. You can't come in and swoop and, just be dominating, right? Because it's you said earlier, you're going to cause friction, and yeah, you don't want that friction. It's awful.
Right. And that's from the third party, by the way. We are removed from it. And they will listen to us. They will listen to us in a way that they won't listen to their adult child.
That's important. So in your experience, are there any misconceptions people have about senior move managers?
I wouldn't say misconceptions. I'm so glad you asked the question of what the difference is between a mover, because there are movers out there who are trying to capitalize on, the fact that boomers are aging, and now even not millennials, Gen Xers are hitting 60. Like and because we're skewing so much older, you have all these movers calling themselves senior movers, but they're really not. So it's really, I'm so grateful to you for having this platform to spread awareness that this industry exists, because, I've been a member for, I think, 12 years now, and have had my business for 11. And it's an amazing group of people who, you do not get into this business because you want to get rich. You get into it because you really want to make a difference in other people's lives and really guide. I love when people call us angels, or, it really fills me up when you see the look of relief on someone's face when we have just taken away this burden of moving and what it's going to look like. And one of the things I didn't share with you that I wish that I had said was, when we unpack and put things away for people, another difference is that we're going to dust that item off, and we're going to help find things that people have forgotten that they have, and we're going to create spaces that people look around. Sometimes they haven't hung their own pictures up, and then when we're going through their home and we're seeing things, we are really trying to make that home feel so beautiful that when someone walks in, they're like, I get to live here. So
yeah, when my grandma downsized many years ago, she's been gone for now 10 years, but she went from this big huge house down to this little 1-bedroom apartment, and she pared down, and it was just perfect for her, and she loved her little space. But what was most important was that her chair was positioned just right so she could look out the window, and because this was in Minnesota, so she could see the summer, the trees, the leaves, and then the beautiful winters, and all the snow. And that was the most important thing to her, because she just didn't like TV. She read books. So that was her thing.
Nice.
So what advice would you give any Gen Xers helping their aging parents plan a move, especially if they're feeling stuck or overwhelmed?
I think knowing that the resources exist and the help exists is huge, because I think a lot of adult children think that they have to take it on for themselves. And, there is help out there. And I don't know if you've interviewed placement professionals yet. But
no, I've talked to some Downsize and Declutter Sorted Out San Diego has been on the podcast, and so no, I haven't talked about well, a placement agent. Monica is coming on, but we haven't spoken yet.
Okay. I just think that, for people to understand what resources are available is so important. And, knowing that you can get that support, and that you don't have to do it all by yourself. And, you can bring in the experts. We do this every day. So I would say, besides that, the one other piece of advice that I would give, I didn't share this, but I'm a certified senior advisor, and I have special training in a lot of the different areas that a senior is going to, and their adult child is going to have to look at: Medicare, Medicaid, all of those kind of things. But when I was taking the class, I heard this quote, and it was so good that I really want to drive it home. And that is, just because your eyes are closed doesn't mean it isn't there. And, it's really hard to see your parent age. It's letting go of your childhood, your parent, and also accepting our own mortality as our parent. And I'm sure that that's what
Right.
happened for you when you lost your mom. That's actually when I had cancer, the same thing. You go through like, oh my gosh. And so a lot of times we don't want to look at it because it's hard. It's hard to
Mhm.
look at it. And so I would just say that that would probably be one of the best pieces of advice I can give to us Gen Xers. And that is, you know, once you confront it, you know, it's good. I remember when I did my will, it was the hardest thing to like do that will, right?
Yeah.
Now it's done. It's done. And,
Mhm.
you know, like I
And
said,
it's
none of
important. It's
absolutely.
important.
So have those conversations, you know, have them record the stories with your parents, you know, get pictures of the items that are important. One more thing I want to talk about is I've had people come up to me and say, I love this. I don't want to get rid of it. And then I say, then don't. If you love it, there is your answer. Then you should find
Mhm.
a way to keep it. That should be
Yep.
your priority.
Yep.
And one other piece of advice I want to give you when making those decisions, I always find that it's easier to make the decisions about what to keep than to think about what you're not going to keep. So there's something called the dining room table test. So you clear off the dining room table and you kind of think of it as if there was a fire, what would I take? And
Mhm.
that, you know, could be the playbook that you use for what's really important.
What fits on your dining room table?
Exactly.
I like that idea. Yeah, I was one of the things you were saying, when you were like doing your will, I turned 50 last year and all of a sudden I just started hearing this clock in the back of my head starting to tick. And it's really real. It's like, whoa, I'm 50. So that means I'm on the downward slide of things right now.
If it makes you feel any better, I turned 55 in January. And so
Well,
I
happy
came
birthday.
from one of those communities.
I know, I know. It's funny. Like I down the street on Alabama Street, there's a 55 plus condo community, and I'm like, oh, 5 more years, I could just buy in there, and they're so cheap. I'm like, no.
Mhm.
I'm just like, no. Finally, if someone is just beginning to think about downsizing and transitioning a loved one, when's the best time to reach out to you? Like, what does that look like?
I think, you know, it's really good to have a conversation and just to know. And we do offer one free consultation. I always think it's a little bit better to do it when you're a little closer to the time. But, you know, the more time you have, the better, because, you know, the last thing that you want to do is get the dumpster and have to like put everything in there because you
Yep.
couldn't do it. The more time we have, to figure out, you know, what items can be sold, what items, you know, can be donated. And by the way, one of our core values at Silver Linings Transitions is green. We really want to keep as much out of landfills as possible, so we
That's
use reusable
awesome.
bins rather than boxes. And what I tell people is, if you are trying to choose between the garbage and donation, unless it's just obvious trash, give it to donation and let
Mhm.
them put it in the garbage if that's going to be the outcome. But even like scraps of clothing that are stained can be sold, and you know they can do something else with it. So
Yeah.
um,
Upcycle it.
exactly.
Hmm.
So, and I've even seen, you know, where I was driving by the hospice resale center, and
Hmm.
like the Salvation Army had their trucks and they were pulling stuff out that couldn't be sold at the, you know, at the hospice store.
Oh, that's nice. That's
Hmm.
nice. Well,
Yeah.
Jamie, I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing your insight with us and a lot of families. I mean, I think that they're going to get a lot of value from this. And for anyone listening who's thinking about downsizing or helping loved ones transition, I really encourage you to reach out to a senior move manager like Jamie. She's got the right support for you. And I can also attest that one of the people she works with is a good friend of mine. We used to work together in the 90s at Nordstrom. We used to sell shoes together. So I know she's got good people working for her. So I'll make sure to link Jamie's website, Silver Linings Transition, in the show notes, and you can learn more and connect with her directly. Jamie, thank you. Thank you so much.
I just want to highlight one thing. It's Silver Linings Transitions with an S.
Transitions.
And I
Yeah,
want to just mention one other thing, and that's that we are A plus accredited in our industry. So that means that we are the best of the senior move managers. That means we have done more work and gone through more stringent accreditation.
that's
And
awesome.
so when people are looking for a move manager, senior move manager, they should look first for that accreditation.
That's awesome. And then give us the NASM website one more time.
It's nasmm.org.
And you're on that website. Another quick question before we go. San Diego County, obviously. Anywhere else in Southern California that you go?
We have gone to other areas. Sometimes we have clients that just love us so much that they want us to go to LA or they want us to go to Palm Desert. We've gone Riverside, Murrieta. I mean, we concentrate in San Diego, but if we have a special client or someone that's moving here, what we'll try to do actually is find a move manager that we've worked with in another area, and we will do the unpack. And also, that's really important to know too for anyone who's listening, is that we do work, interstate with other move managers where we coordinate that together.
Oh, fabulous. Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. Jamie, thank you so much. I'm going to put all your information down in the show notes. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us again on Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad. We will see you on the next episode.
Thanks for having me.